I'm a nutritional therapist and have been for 25 years. And a lot of the work that I do is working with women. And I cover a lot with female health. And historically at ION, I've delivered the female health lectures, and I have endometriosis myself. So I've got quite an interest in the whole area of like female health, reproductive health, energy, pain management, the nervous system, the immune system, the gut is all linked together.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you about the Emma Barnett fighting endometriosis documentary from the BBC. So, what has your initial reaction been?
Well, firstly, I'm absolutely delighted. I'm delighted that someone has been able to shine a light on this condition that is actually a lot more common than I think we're sort of led to believe. And the documentary really picks up on that. And a condition that seems still to be so hard to get a diagnosis for. So I love the fact that Emma Barnett is doing such good work to raise awareness of this. And I think her intention, I picked up the intention was she feels a degree of sort of anger, I suppose, that women are being either misdiagnosed, or when they are diagnosed, not necessarily, there's no pathway currently within our NHS in the United Kingdom that is really set up to support women with this debilitating condition.
Mhm. I really liked that it wasn't only her, but the story of many women, and it was the raw reaction, the raw feeling of them suffering with the pain. And I think cinematographically it was really good because the shots, they are like really raw. Some of the women, they were telling that they never got diagnosed, or they I saw some figures that it says it takes over 9 years to get diagnosed, and one of them was suffering a lot of pain. They told her it was nothing, or it was PMD, or another
Yeah.
thing, to the point that she was thinking, maybe it's in my head, but I'm suffering this pain a lot. Like what is it then? So they making them even question themselves as well because of their pain. They
Yeah, yeah.
dismiss them.
I think pain is a really difficult thing to be able to describe, and for other people to be able to genuinely connect empathy with. Um, and I think that often with endometriosis, what comes along at the same time are things like bloating, digestive problems are very common, extreme fatigue, problems with like bowel movements, so IBS type symptoms. So I suppose what goes through a doctor's mind is thinking, okay, well, maybe it's IBS or it's something to do with the digestive system. And I think because there is such little understanding of the condition within the general population, it's harder for women to be able to advocate for themselves. We've seen with like the improvements with menopause and perimenopause through things like documentary work in the UK. We've seen women be empowered and emboldened to be able to go to their doctors and say, no, I don't feel right, and get support and help with that. So hopefully with this kind of work, women are going to have a bit more agency to be able to feel confident to go back to their doctors when it's not that they're being fobbed off. I think it's just that just generally there's just a lack of understanding and a lack of engagement and actual interest in the condition. And I suppose the other thing is then what do you do medically with this? And this is another thing that the light was shone on this. Medically speaking, there's either the offer of contraceptive pill, which is really not that helpful for the vast majority of women with endometriosis. There is invasive surgery, can be really, really helpful, but that's a big deal, and there is no help or support afterwards. There's no information about recovery. There's no information or education about what you can do with your diet, with your lifestyle. even how you can learn about pain and pain management and what's going on with the brain, and how the brain can remember pain. So we see it in the documentary. Emma Barnett has her surgery, but and she has the endometriosis tissues dealt with, but the pain remains. What's going on there? Why aren't the questions being asked about what is going on with the pain? Why, we're seeing some changes. I know an amazing doctor who works in Edinburgh, Dr. Barbara Phipps. She's coming on a podcast that I do very soon to talk about this. And she does, her whole thing, and a lot of her colleagues are working on this premise of pain, the association we have with pain, the language we use around pain, how pain is something that we are brought up to almost fear, and how the brain is very clever at keeping us safe. So pain signaling can genuine pain signaling can remain even when the thing that initially was causing the pain has been dealt with. So it's those sorts of things that I think it would be lovely for a more holistic look to be taken, because especially when from a medical position there is limited scope, there is limited access to what people can at the moment get, and there are limited answers about what is driving this condition and why some women are suffering more than others, and why does it come back for some people and not for others? What is going on with the immune system in this regard? So while I just think there's a lot that we could be doing with more engagement in the actual condition.
Yes, and does nutrition have a place to recover from endometriosis or to alleviate the symptoms?
Yeah. I mean, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of women with endometriosis over the years. Now, every case is different. So there are cases that there are really debilitating symptoms that women can experience with this condition. But it is absolutely true to say that you can do an awful lot to either bring down, expand, I suppose, the time between pain episodes. So, you're looking to sort of go, how long can we almost keep in remission for between the pain episodes? There's a lot that can be done to help manage inflammation in the body naturally and with food and nutrition. There's a lot that can be done to help the gut and the microbes in the gut to work well, which actually talks to and educates our immune system and inflammatory pathways. There's a lot that can be done, as I say, with like understanding and helping people understand about pain and pain management. So from my perspective, if I look at just me as a case, there was a period in my life where, so just like many of the women in the documentary, put on the contraceptive pill very young because I was missing so much school from pain. With my periods, vomiting because the pain was so bad, but, really, really unable to, debilitating pain. And then, of course, as I get older, staying on the contraceptive pill because it's sort of the easy thing to do. And then, wanting to start a family. And this is where it all starts, becoming an issue. And at one point being in just genuinely constant pain, 24/7. Doesn't matter if you've got your period or not. And this is what we saw in the documentary. Now, where I was lucky was I had surgery, but I had loads of information around me because I was interested in nutrition, in recovering from my surgeries. Each time I've had surgeries for various different things. I've had a number of fertility problems and bits and pieces. But also looking at how I can manage my condition going forward. And I just don't really get period pain anymore, and I remember when it suddenly flipped and I was walking around with my period happening and thinking, I can't believe this. Where's it felt so bizarre to me. Like, where's the pain? This is so weird. What's going on? So it is possible to come through it, but it takes help, it takes work, it takes support, it takes empathy. And as I say, because pain isn't something like having a broken leg, other people can't see. I mean, I used to be walking around with a hot water bottle attached to me all the time, so people could see I had I had tummy ache. But I'd been through the whole thing. Oh, you've got IBS. You've got, I'd been through everything. Everyone I think you meet with endometriosis has had this kind of experience at some point. But yeah, I feel very positive about being able to help endometriosis. So that there's always options, and I think many women with endometriosis would say even if by 10 or 20% I could get an improvement, that would be life changing. So sometimes we're looking for perfection, we're looking for the ultimate cure all of everything. Maybe that isn't the story for everybody, but for a lot of people, just having that hope and having some ideas and being able to have agency and being able to feel that you're doing something about it is a very powerful thing. That's very, very powerful for healing, to feel that sense of optimism and control.
So, which kind of foods would you recommend for women with endometriosis?
So I think it's about thinking, how can I first of all help myself to have a healthy gut and manage inflammation as well as I can? So then we start looking at the sorts of foods that have got good evidence for supporting overall digestive health, gut health, and inflammation management. So traditionally, we might say like a Mediterranean or a traditional style diet. So it's a form of eating that really encourages and embraces fresh food, lots of plant foods, foods that have got a variety of different colours, vibrant colours and things like that. It can be helpful for some women with endometriosis to limit or keep an eye on things like saturated fats, and really instead switch into more omega-3 related fats. So for example, possibly reducing down, not eliminating, but reducing down more of the red meats and processed foods and things, and adopting a diet where you're eating more salmon, sardines, fish in general can be absolutely fantastic. So easier to digest proteins that have got nice composition of fats in, or looking for being discerning, I guess, with the food choices you make when buying meat, and maybe thinking, okay, I'll eat less of it, but I'll look to buy meat that has been raised in farming with farming practices where the animal is grazing and eating a natural diet true to them as well, rather than a grain-fed diet, because we know in that regard then the fat composition of that meat is quite different, and probably a bit more helpful with an endometriosis profile. So looking at all of those sorts of things can be quite helpful. So it's often about just going, what am I doing? The thing with endometriosis, or many chronic health conditions, is with endometriosis, people don't often really speak about the absolutely crushing fatigue that people experience a lot of the time. And this can be a physical fatigue and an emotional and mental fatigue as well, brain fog sort of fatigue. Endometriosis is highly inflammatory, okay? And so that can really have a seismic impact on fatigue levels. And sometimes women with endometriosis are more susceptible to things like low ferritin, which is our iron stores, which can really affect energy. So that makes it hard, because you're feeling in pain, you're feeling exhausted, you feel like you know what you should be doing with your diet, but actually to get there feels overwhelming and quite hard. So I'd say just taking it one step at a time, just looking at what you like that you could add in that's as fresh as possible. A lot of women will be doing this stuff already, and if they've tried the basics of going for a really, where possible, as low level ultra processed food as you can. So really as low as possible with those packaged long life foods with lots of different ingredients in them, and picking instead foods that you recognize as food, that's been grown on a farm. Starting with just that, if you've tried all of that and you're thinking, right, I'm eating a healthy Mediterranean based diet, then actually beyond that, it's like, well, maybe I need to go a bit deeper. I need to understand a bit more about different things to do with my gut, different things to do with how my body is responding to the foods that I'm eating. um, Manage coming from it from a slightly different sort of a sort of more hardcore anti-inflammatory perspective. But I think that's when working with a nutritional therapist is going to be a useful thing, because it's about sort of working together to go, where are you now? What's going on with you? What have you tried? Where are the opportunities that we're missing at the moment? What can we weave in from this perspective? And it always, in my experience, is better to come from an abundance perspective rather than a restrictive perspective. So it can be very easy to start asking the question, what food is making me feel ill? Especially if there are IBS problems attached to it, or gut or bowel problems associated. And it's not to say that that's not true, that they're valid, that there could be foods that are sort of influencing how you feel. But often I'm saying to women, it's not really necessarily the food, it's the environment the food's finding itself in. So how do we just help your body to be able to enjoy and tolerate all of these foods? And it comes back to managing inflammation again. So it can be quite complicated, but I think starting with the basics, and also having a genuine interest in going, I think one thing that came across for me with the documentary was an understandable degree of anger. However, there's a lot to be said for, instead of going, why has this happened to me and this isn't fair? I mean, I get that. But another way to look at it is just asking the question with a slightly different tone. Why is this happening? What could I learn about this? And what is going on for me with pain? I'd say it would be really good to explore the actual the newer understanding of what pain is. Dr. Barbara Phipps, who I just love, and she talks a lot about a quite a well-known case within pain management circles that's often discussed in training, which is the story of a man on a building site who there was a nail gun, and an accident happened, and basically the nail gun shot a nail through his foot. Okay, and he was in unbelievable pain. It was awful. Had to call an ambulance. Blah blah blah. He was given morphine. The morphine wasn't working. He was taken by ambulance to hospital. He was in excruciating pain. When they got him into hospital and cut away his boot, they were able to see that the nail had actually gone straight through the gap in his toes, that it hadn't touched, there was not a mark on him. The nail had not penetrated him. It had actually gone between the toes. But him seeing that nail gun go into his foot, his brain had picked up, this is going to hurt. And so he had genuinely experienced pain, but there was genuinely no mark on him. He was not injured, right? So when you look at pain from that perspective, it kind of changes a lot of what we think. So I think sometimes with endometriosis, engaging with pain in a slightly different way can be quite helpful, because that opens the door to, is there anything we can do with our brains that can help us unlearn the messages of pain that have been programmed through years and years of having this endometriosis? So there's plenty of really interesting stuff out there.
Of course, there's also the trauma, right? That you have suffered for so many years, this excruciating pain, and your brain is used to that pain, so you kind of still feel the trauma, and
Yeah.
it's normal, of course, because it's Is that
Yeah,
very
and yeah, and to not underestimate as well the impact on health and emotional well-being of feeling that there's been no answers, or feeling that you're not being taken seriously, or that it's not an important enough problem. You know, again, it's a bit like chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, all these things. You can't see, another person cannot see or genuinely feel what that person's feeling. So it makes it harder for the people involved in the care or the research or the interest to actually have the empathy enough to want to look into it more. I think unless you've experienced something yourself, or you know someone and you've seen what someone has gone through, it can make it quite hard. So I think that's one of the other things that we have with chronic illness. I mean, endometriosis, you can see from scans, you can see with laparoscopies, you can see when people are going into something, goodness me, this is a big deal. But it's very, very difficult when we can't see with our own eyes as a GP, as a doctor or whatever. You know, I understand that it can be hard. I think that's one
Mhm.
of the problems with it. And of course, it's a women only condition. And I'm afraid to say, um, so it's probably not been that important compared to male conditions or conditions that affect men and women, which is a
Mhm.
which is a depressing thing to say, but I think we have to name that, and I think Emma did a good job of naming that in the documentary.
What is your reaction overall of the documentary?
Well, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good to shine a spotlight. I would love a follow up documentary now, that is looking at, okay, so maybe there isn't anything a pathway in the NHS at the moment, but what can we do? What can we explore? And what more can we understand about what you do about it? So I think part one is, yeah, this is rubbish. This is not being taken seriously. People need to know about this, and people need to understand how it affects lives. Part two should be, okay, what can we do? What agency do we have? And what techniques can we start driving public interest in now? Whether it's to do with lifestyle, diet, exercise, um, pain management techniques, you name it, breathing, stress management, nervous system regulation, all of these things, because things like acupuncture, herbal medicine, you know, I think that sometimes there's people will say none of these things are particularly well evidenced. Well, actually, that's not true. There is evidence for things being very helpful for pain management. And maybe if you're asking the question all the time, endometriosis, maybe you're not getting the answers. But if you're coming from a pain perspective, you'll find that there's a lot of useful stuff out there. And people's lived experience is very valid. So asking people what has worked for them, that is valid. That's valid as a useful tool, because what works for one person isn't necessarily going to work for somebody else, but it could work for somebody else. So I think just again, coming together and sharing ideas in a really sensible way, and coming from an inquisitive mindset about how we can just help the whole body to work as well as possible, is that's what I would like to see next.
Mhm. Hopefully, yes, there's a part two, and they have more different professionals, holistic approaches, and try to find a way of also. I'm sure there must be women who have managed to alleviate their symptoms through a natural remedy,
I'm,
through exercise. So, is of course.
I'm one of them. I'm one of them, and I'm one of many. You know, there are many many women who have who are managing their endometriosis. I kind of, I mean, my mum was messaging me about the program, and you know, and I was like, honestly, mum, I kind of just don't even feel like I have it now. You know, I just don't. Every now and again I'll have problems, But so this is not this is a can-do situation. But of course, in the same way that there isn't enough information out there about what the condition is, understanding what the condition is, there's also, of course, therefore, not the information out there about what you can do, what you can do for yourself, the things that you can try. And I think Emma, at the beginning of the documentary, you see her in the gym, you see her doing things, and there's only so much you're going to be able to fit into a documentary. And they're sitting down and going, what are the outcomes that we want from this? And I felt the outcome was, we want to raise awareness, and we want to shake this up with that. So of course it doesn't make sense to eat up time within the documentary looking at all of the things that I am sure all of those women in the documentary had already tried, so I'm not suggesting that they haven't been doing other things, but it's just, like I say, if it's a kind of cumulative benefit if you can just keep walking forward doing small things each day. And the other thing to say with it is, coming from the spirit of, we know from studies, like, I mean, even if you look at weight loss studies and stuff, which is, you'd think isn't the same, but if you're looking at mindset and like the psychology of health and wellness, if somebody is approaching any project, if you like, with regards to their health, if they're coming from an optimistic mindset and they're coming from a position of, I'm just going to keep going at this, and what if, and enjoying the process. Oh, I've discovered I do like this food. Actually, I never liked exercise before, but what I'm doing with it now is I'm not doing the exercise to go, I must exercise. I wish I didn't have to, but I've got to because I've heard it's good for my endometriosis. But finding ways emotionally to be able to connect it to a positive meaning, that actually has a far more beneficial impact physiologically on the body. So I often am just coming back to the mind and the brain and the language we're using, and how we think about things actually is way more powerful than I think it's ever given credit for.
Do you have maybe a someone who benefits, like a case study, or someone who suffered from endometriosis and then manage her symptoms of pain?
Yeah, I mean, I work with a really wide range of different cases and people, but yeah, it's entirely possible to reduce pain. It's entirely possible to improve your digestive health. It's entirely possible to manage your hormones. It's entirely possible to influence inflammation in the body and the immune system. Diet, nutrition, lifestyle is able to do all of those things. So if you slowly work on all of those things, before long your period pain is under control. Before long you've had a period and it's like, oh, that period wasn't so bad that month. Or actually, I'm now only in pain for 1 week out of 4. Or actually, I don't have period pain at all anymore, which is pretty much my story. So it is entirely possible. It's entirely possible. And there are certain times where you absolutely need to have life-saving medicine, okay? And there's times where, for quality of life, medicine is going to be helpful. I think that what nutrition and lifestyle medicine offers really is, number one, like an opportunity for medicine to work better, so it can actually enhance things, and it offers an opportunity for less to be maybe needed, of medicine perhaps, and it offers the opportunity for amazing recovery. So and like I say, anyone with a chronic condition, when I meet someone, I'm not saying to them, let's work on how we cure you. I'm often saying, let's work together on how we can expand out the times between your flares. That's how we approach it. There's room for everything. And you have to put the person that you're working with at the center of that. You have to understand your boundaries and your limits. You have to understand your limits in knowledge. A little bit of knowledge is a very dangerous thing, you know, so you've got to understand where your boundaries start and finish and what's appropriate for you to work with or not. I like working with food because for me, food is a very safe, enjoyable, um, abundant way of looking at health. And with some exceptions, there are it's not going to interact with other medicine, you know, with some exceptions. So again, in nutritional therapy, we're trained to understand what are interactions here with conventional medicine and nutrition. But also we're trained to know, okay, if you're on this medicine, what are the potential nutritional deficiencies that you might be faced with? Again, this isn't spoken about, you know. So there's it's just about being evidence-based, sensible, ethical, and professional with the people that you work with, taking your ego and your desires out of it and working in the best interests of the client that you're working with. And that's what we're teaching, you know. So it's wonderful.
Yeah, there are more women who are trying to understand and trying to be more understanding, but also nutritional therapists go also to the root cause in terms of nutrition. So that's
Yes,
amazing.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you for inviting me to speak to you today.
Yes, it was lovely to meet you. Really nice